Boom, boom, water. Well, what else would thundercloud be carrying? Welcome to Chillin Tuesday. Here in the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, I'm with Henry Lawson. Yeah, I'm Thundercloud. You know, Mum calls me James. Washing away the garbage, living rainbows after rains. All right, let's get on with reading Henry out today. I'm going through a bit of a Henry Lawson journey, I guess you'll call it, and we're up to 1892, around about the time in Australian, colonial Australian history, because it was pre-federation. They were talking about getting rid of the lords, were those with the land, had a special voting rights, reforming the parliament. And so this following one's called The House of Fossils by Henry Lawson. And I'm reading out of this one here, a Campfire yarn published by Lansdowne Press in 1984. It's a whole anthology of Henry's stuff. The House of Fossils. Behold, above the people an old museum stands, the ancient House of Fossils, which is mighty in the lands, and there, as in the days gone by, when ancient rulers lied in vulnerable ignorance and cheek are petrified. And though the god of property might grit his teeth and frown, I think it's time the people pulled the old museum down. I think that we've been fooled enough by venerable lies. I think it's time the workmen wipe the verdure from their eyes. Why send our men to Parliament? There's nothing to be won, for all the good they do is by the fossilised undone. We start the car of progress and we see it coming back, for lo, the old museum stands forever in the track. We cannot pass the measures that the people talk about, and there'll be no reform until we cleared the fossils out. We battled for one man, one vote, and the people passed the bill. But listen how the fossilised can thwart the people's will. Now, Pilcher first denied in terms sarcastically choice that Labor members represent the working people's voice. He went a little further and he spiked the guns to wit. He did deny their rights to say they represented it. He drew his sword of argument from out its rusty sheath and dared the champions who threw the assembly in his teeth. And he denied the truth to all intents and purposes. I want to know what Pilcher represents. Then Coombs must add his drivel to the everlasting flood. He hoped that they would stop the bill and nip it in the bud. By the plant shall bud again, and time the grand old thief shall nip the house of fossils in the sere and yellow leaf. A fossil, he, and so, of course, he thinks that it is best that any man should vote where'er he has an interest. He gave a case in point, he said, in other days, lang syne, he went into the wilderness and opened up a mine. The place is populated now by thousands, mostly fools. He even gave the number of the children in the schools. And if the bill was passed, well then, what that? Well, anyhow, he couldn't represent the boss, the district now. I really think the man who craved so much for place and pelf should go and dig another hole and undertake himself. The ironmonger Macintosh addressed the fossilised. He claimed the rights of property. They should be recognised. He lives like other rocks as though the past has never been. He cannot say he really has since last election seen a single public meeting called on purpose to discuss the question of one man, one vote. But it was ever thus, for if the whole creation left the reign of wrong behind, the fossils wouldn't see, for the petrified are blind. And in his inconsistency, he thinks it is too much that he'd be asked to give a vote to parasites and such. Alas, for human arguments, why, when these enlightened men deny the starving thief a vote while wealthy thieves have 10? If honest time, Labour can't outvote the spieler and the tout, 'tis time the Lord got up in wrath and wiped the nations out. Then Joseph rose to caution the community at large. I really think the God of greed was left in Israel's charge. He did not hesitate to say that if the bill was passed, we'd turn and put a cruel tax on property at last. He looked into the future, just as far as he could see, and drew a painful picture of poor helpless property. He mouthed about frugality and said as bold as brass that which injures capital will damn the working class. He drivelled and he cautioned. We do not say he lied. He cautioned mankind just as much as Pilcher had denied. Then purblind lawyer Pigott rose with something on his throat. He said the bill was never meant to give one man one vote. The gist of Pigott's argument was that the bill was meant to make a pauper equal to an honourable gent. And then upon the bill there fell another of the rocks, with 30,000 acres of the people's land 'twas Cox. He said, etc. But why repeat the senseless bosh again? As Anthony remarked, they are all honourable men. And still above the people, the House of Fossils stands, the greatest of phenomena in these enlightened lands. And therein, as in the grand old days when Roman fossils lied in vulnerable ignorance and cheek petrified, and though it shelters property and helps to prop the crown, I think it's time the toilers pulled the old museum down. I think that we've been fooled enough by venerable lies. I think it's time the people cleansed the verdure from their eyes. It was published in The Truth, 1892. Yes, perhaps we could do with a bit of a reform of our political system in Australia, maybe get rid of the states and just have 2 levels of government, regional and federal. Wow, that would save billions of dollars in bureaucratic mismanagement and doubling up every year, wouldn't it? And what about if we made parties illegal, and so no one could be beholden to party politics? They actually had to vote on their conscience and on what the people that they represent wanted. They have to go and ask those that they represent. Or what even if the people could propose legislation and vote on it because we're politically savvy in Australia? Wow, that'd be a novel. Direct democracy. Wow, that we could really get some things happening that change this place for the better. Here we go, more echoes from the old museum. This one was also published in The Truth. Ooh, yeah, it's political, sure is. A pretty lot of loonies in a government asylum, that upper house of fossils, as the working classes style them. The present writer lately was constrained to write about him. He wants to know the reason why we cannot do without him. We analysed the fossilised and from their talk selected some reasons why the people's bill by them should be rejected. And as a fresh incentive to consign them to the drivel, we'll give some more examples of their everlasting drivel. First, we see the mighty Lucas, a man await among his brothers, rise to add his wretched drivel to the drivel of the others. And he said, I think, great Homer, pray excuse the muse for winking shades of all the ancient wizards. Just imagine Lucas thinking. According to his speech, he rather seemed to think it was a pity that they couldn't have the measure mutilated in committee. Necessary alterations thought desirable, he muttered, but we scarcely see the reasons for the utters that he uttered. He desired, at least we think, for his words appear to show it, that the bill be mutilated, till his father wouldn't know it. Then another Jewish ruler of the working people's Tophet, rather bolder than his fellows, claimed and rose to be a prophet. When the late reforms were started breaking down the old class fences, he and other men predicted in the most fearful consequences. He regards attempted changes in the sacred constitution as the reddest kind of treason, leading up to revolution. Others threatened, others cautioned, but the Jew put no restrictions on his fancy. What the dickens do we care for his predictions? He, perhaps for selfish reasons, fears the democratic shake-ups. If the crimson flag was hoisted, 'twould be bad for prophets such as Jacob's. Then Senil de Salis rose, another honorary filcher, and spoke a while in favour of the unlearned pilcher. He wept for bleeding property, this venerable talker. He gave a case in point. He took the case of Mr. Walker, who robbed the toilers of the world to leave his hairs in clover and went to heaven having died a millionaire twice over. They paid 100,000, Salis says, in income taxes. And didn't such a man deserve his extra votes he axes? A tax on property pretend the ruin of the nation, and well, in short, he would support the financial reformation. Then another fossil, Bowker, waking from his mental slumber, gravely tells us that the working people are the greatest number. Property supports the workman, and he wants it understood, sir, that he'll always vote for measures which will work the greatest good, sir. But he asked the same old question that the rich have asked for ages. Now, if property is ruined, how can working men get wages? For the House to pass the measure would, he thinks, be suicidal. Property is the mar of wages, property is Bowker's idol. 'Twas his duty to the contrary, and the Queen across the ocean, to oppose the second reading, he would vote against the motion. And behold, as writ in Hansard, 'twas the sheepish shepherd's pleasure to have very great objections to the clauses of this measure. Property was overlooked, good Lord, how property lies bleeding. Therefore it was his intention to oppose the second reading. He has had control of workmen since he was a little kiddie, and he has got no objection to the workers, neither did he, in the past or in the present. This substance of his gabble ever look upon the workers as a class objectionable. And he talks of thieves and loafers being voters, rot and gammon. For the real loafers, suffrage is the robber vote of mammon. And Wesleyan rose with gable, only fitted for the hearers. He had lied about our leaders, lied about the Queensland shearers. He who claims to teach the lesson of the father and the teacher rose to lie about his brothers, slandered mankind like a preacher. And still they talked, and yet they talked then for another wizard. It was the seer of Windsor, rose with something in his gizzard. The boss of all the arguments was that which he selected. 'Twas the bill would stop some gents from being re-elected. But let the people wait and hope, a coming time shall free 'em from the reservoirs of drivel in the stagnant old museum. And so the people's bill was squashed, and moneybags exalted, and the people's friends were slandered and insulted. One man, one vote it may not be, but if the wealthy trifle with labour's rights and God's decree, we'll try one man, one rifle. We'll have another boat afloat, and plenty hands to pull it, And if it ain't one man, one vote, 'twill be one man, one bullet. Ominous. Maybe that's why they took away our guns in Australia. They're afraid of us. When the bush begins to speak is the next one. They know it's not in England yet. Their pens are over bold. We're seen in fancy pictures that are 50 years too old. They think we are a careless race, a childish race and weak. They'll know us yet in England when the bush begins to speak. When the bush begins to speak, when the bush begins to speak, when the West by greed's invaded and the bush begins to speak. The leaders that will be, the men of southern destiny, are not found in cities that are builded by the sea. They'll learn to love Australia by many a western creek. They'll know them yet in England when the bush begins to speak. When the bush begins to speak, when the bush begins to speak. When the West by greed's invaded and the bush begins to speak. All ready for the struggle and waiting for the change. The army of our future lies encamped beyond the range. Australia, for her patriots, will not have far to seek. They'll know her yet in England when the bush begins to speak. When the bush begins to speak, when the bush begins to speak. When the West by greed's invaded and the bush begins to speak. We'll find the peace and comfort that our fathers could not find, or some shall strike the good old blow that leaves a mark behind. We'll find the truth and liberty our fathers came to seek, or let them know in England when the bush began to speak. When the bush begins to speak, when the bush begins to speak, when the West by greed's invaded and the bush begins to speak. Again, that was first published in The Truth, When the Bush Begins to Speak, by Henry Lawson, 1892. This one's called Cross the Border. They're actually talking about the border of Albury-Wodonga. Cross the border, Albury, Wednesday. The body of a man who committed suicide in the Murray has been identified as that of a German named F. Frank or F. Fram. 5 weeks since the man came to Albury from Rutherglen, Victoria, in search of work and had been stopping at a private boarding house. Latterly, he had been in a despondent condition of mind and complained to his landlady that he had had trouble with his relatives. He was unable to pay for his board through failing to obtain work. At the magisterial inquiry held today, a verdict was recorded that deceased committed suicide by drowning. But there was no evidence to show what his mental health condition was at the time. Across the border. He was but a poor mechanic, and from Germany he came. But the paragraphs in papers seemed to doubt about his name. Fram, or Frank, I think they spell it. I don't exactly know how. And there's a doubt about his surname, but it doesn't matter now. He was looking for employment, but it wasn't bit it got. And the bill for board and lodging seemed to trouble him a lot. And in case we fancy it was neither safe nor right to go strolling down the river with his misery at night. By himself. Ah well, we know not. There are things we do not know. And perhaps he saw his mother, as in days of long ago. Perhaps he saw his father who, beneath a porch of vine, smoked a long pipe in the gloaming by a cottage across the Rhine. What remains? In human nature, there are many chords to strike. Let the reader paint the picture you can fancy if you like, that the Murray and the starlight put the lonely man in mind of the river of his boyhood and the girl he left behind. He was unemployed and friendless, and he hadn't any gold. And the aching void was greater than his manly breast could hold. So he drifted by the Murray when the day was growing dim, and the river on its journey took to drifting over him. We say the deed was sinful, but the Master will forgive, for he knows it's getting harder for a working man to live. Frank was done with care, and nothing kept his body from its bed, save, of course, the formal inquest on the cold, sarcastic dead. Let us trust, in spite of cynics, that he knelt upon the sword just to send a last petition on approval to the Lord. And if our religion's questioned, 'tis enough that Frank replied with the bitter, cold, sarcastic silence of the suicide. Workmen struggle and are beaten, and they give it best and go, and like Frank, they cross the border where the mighty waters flow. But I rather think the Master will inquire, and the reason why, in the universal inquest, cross the border by and by. Truth, published in the Truth. Next one was published in the Bulletin. It's called Mayday in Europe. Bar the gates of Mammon Castle. See, the troops are posted there. I have seen the crimson banner of the children of despair. Here they come, oh, here they come, and their eyes are cowed no longer, and their bloodlines are dumb. Bloodless lips are dumb. Here they come. Let the monarchs make a treaty, and the pregnant hours declare war against the social system by the army of despair. Here it comes, oh, here it comes. Now defiant hymns are growling like the roll of muffled drums. Here it comes. This is not the pretty struggle of a state against a state, but a universal rising of the victims of the great. Here they come, oh, here they come. They have lived, my God, and suffered in the cabin in the slum. Here they come. They will stop the car of progress, for its wheels have gone too long over human hearts while loaded with the passengers of wrong. Here they are, oh, here they are. They will stop the car of progress, for its wheels have rolled too far. Here they are. Yeah, well, an interesting poem. The rhyme and meter is, it's a bit of a, it's sort of like a, what do you call it, a limerick, but it's not metered like a limerick at all. It's got an A, there, despair, come, dumb, come, sort of a, B, 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 rhyming structure. the old rebel flag in the rear. A May Day song. Henry had a bit of a left workers leaning. Wherever the march of oppression reduces a land to despair, no matter how mighty the victors, the flag of rebellion is there. The might of coercion may triumph and freedom be laid on a bier. Yet over the graves of the conquered there waves that old rebel flag in the rear. A king may be great in a country that cheers when a monarch is crowned, but still in his capital city the flag of the rebel is found. A people may boast a republic where liberty dies in a year, but close to their flag comes that stubborn old rag, the old rebel flag in the rear. We sing of the Queen of England, her banner the flaunts in van, yet out from the slums of her capital comes that vengeful red banner of man. Lift up the proud Union of England and bear it along with a cheer, but England, take care in your triumph, for there is the old rebel flag in the rear. There's the great cruel eagle of Russia, where thousands are sunk in despair and the hand of the tyrant is mighty, but the flag of rebellion is there. There's the blood-thirsty flag of the Kaiser, a monarch whom nations can fear, but William will pause ere he marches because the old rebel flag in the rear. There's the red, white and blue of the Frenchman, where soldiers of freedom are true, but lo from the rear comes a banner whose skirts like the white and blue. There's a flag of a boastful republic, a country where freedom is dear, but still in the States there's an army that waits neath the old rebel flag in the rear. There's a new mongrel flag in Australia, and the banner of Britain is here. But to break from the past, we are gathering fast neath the old rebel flag in the rear. There are men in the ranks who are traitors and men who will falter and fear, yet on though the arch of the morning we march neath the old rebel flag in the rear. Some men for the sake of their conscience will join and be true in the strife, and some for the sake of a moment to break the terrible dullness of life. They march neath the flag of the rebels with lives overburdened and drear, and fling them away on a terrible day neath the old rebel flag in the rear. A spirit calls out to the future and bids us to strike in our youth, and the voice of today is appealing for liberty, justice and truth, and the blood that was shed by old rebels for rights that shall ever be dear drips down from the red of the flag overhead of the old rebel flag in the rear. Oh, brothers of mine and of mankind, the banner I sing of is red, with lifeblood of men who were for men to wrong and oppression and dread. Then march neath the flag of the rebels, the red days of battle are near. Let your feet never lag as you march neath the flag, neath the old rebel flag in the rear. Perhaps there will be no reformation, but oh, for a moment to rise and ride on the storm of rebellion and strike at the things that I hate and despise. When progress is stayed by a red barricade and down in the city we hear the roll of a hymn of defiance that ends in a desperate cheer, and on that day they'll remember comes the old rebel flag in the rear. It rose from the birth of the lords of the earth, that old rebel flag in the rear. The rebels are bred by the tyrants who dread the old rebel flag in the rear. 'Twill never be furled where there's wrong in the world, 'twill never fail till there's justice for all. That old rebel flag in the rear. And that's how it ends. Not rhymed at all. That old rebel flag in the rear. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Thank you very much, Henry Lawson. Thank you, Henry. You communist, yeah. Well, that's what he's talking about. Modern parasites. Oh, I hate the wretched toady. What is always bowing down and crawls to them as glitters in the shadow of a crown, who'd almost grovel on the ground and lick the very muck from boots of titled loafers, what are only great by luck. I hate them one, I hate them all, I do abhor 'em quite. But most of all, I hate that sneak, the Labour parasite. I hate the man because he gets his joy from Labour's woes and makes us laughing stocks and gives a handle to our foes. When nothing's on, he yells the most and looks the reddest look, but he's got private business when there's action to be took. I rather think a bitter foe of whom you can depend is better than an enemy what dodges as a friend. We'll fight the foes of Labour's rights and lick 'em by and by. We'll lift impression from the land or have a lift and try. We got a mighty host to fight, but we must first commence with men whose pockets bring 'em down on our side of the fence. So be they damned in speech and prose, and be they damned in song, the crawling, sneaking loafers that what grow fat upon a wrong. The Labour parasite when young is mostly in his club, or if he's poor he earns a bread a loafing round a pub. At first he'll sing God Save the Queen and cheer the English flag, but when the working man's ahead, a different man he is. He stows away his shiny tile and yells for liberty. He raves of equal rights and damns the tyrant with a vim, and none of freedom's gory sons can yell as loud as him. He hates the starved, he never starved, he hates oppression's weight, he hates the gory tyrant with a blast and powder hate, and he is spoiling all the while to take a sword in hand and lead the toilers on to drive oppression from the land. To hear him rave for bread and work and gasp and catch his breath, you'd think he'd seen his missus and the children starved to death. You'd think his father was a man of toil and want and woe. You'd think he'd aged his granny, starved in London long ago. You'd think the social system had come on him pretty rough, but like as not his family is doing right enough. So long as it fills his pocket, he won't let the movement lag, and often gets a billet on a blood and thunder rag. He'll sleep his brains in rum and right of wrongs he never felt until the paper scorches and the type begins to melt. But when a public meeting's called, there's something to be done. He's working for the people at a place across the run. Oh yes, when time is ripe, a storm the robber in his lair, and there is danger in the camp, the twice he's in here there. The chairman gets a letter from the crawling lion skunk. Today his aged grandmother is recently defunct, or else the kids have measles, or there's private things at home, and he's dreadful sorry just because he couldn't come. He's mostly got the gift of gab, and so, of course, he draws. You'd think to hear him speak, his heart and soul was in the cause. He lifts the crowd with parrot cries, and that's all very well. A man can yell for freedom when he gets a bob a yell. Give me £1 a column and a drop to clear my throat, and I will write the reddest song as ever a poet wrote. While grieving for the toilers, he gets fatter all the while. His kindly smile, I notice, is a greasy kind of smile. There's little that for Labour's cause he wouldn't sacrifice, but all the same, his residence is furnished very nice. He's proud to shake a horny hand. He never gets the hump, and yet I notice he prefers the platform to the stump. The Labour parasites, the curse of this exploding age. You'll find him now in fiction and you'll find him on the stage. You'll pay for him for a novel. You pay him for a novel like a fish that's got a bite and help to fill his pockets at the theatre tonight. To give the staff, he'll stage a play on democratic lines and give the girls £1 a week and get half back in fines. And here, of course, I now admit the people are to blame. People and the audience are pretty much the same. They're sorry for the hero when he gets into a fix and rents a garret for a while and has to carry bricks. And they're glad and cheer him when he gets his fortune back and loafs in his ancestral hall, dressed up in shiny black. The people, too impatient, yet they will not think and wait, but rush behind a leader if his talk is only straight. And here I give a little rule, and as should be taught in school. Though made up of the wisest men, a crowd's an awful fool. A crowd will trust a speaker whom a single man would fail to trust as far as one could fling a bullet by the tail. But after all, the true and straight reformers needn't fret. No fear but what the sons of toil will find the best men yet. And follow them, to stick to them and strike beside them too. A man can mostly reach the van when he is straight and true. But in the fight, I think, rather, our rifles will not fail to sight the Labour parasite sitting on the rail. And it really begs the question, how many of our Labour politicians ever actually had like many different jobs or even opened a small business? Wonder really how much experience as working people do the Labour politicians in this country have? Or are they just Labour parasites, as Henry Lawson calls them? Charlie Lilley. Oh, who will bear the battle's brunt and lead the ranks of Labour? Our leaders blunder in the front while victory's a neighbour. We need a man to guide us through the marches rough and hilly. The army wants to know if you are coming, Charlie Lilley. The hand of greed is on the soil and times are growing harder, and soon 'twill break the heart of toil to fill the workman's larder. Across the sky we hear the cry of justice calling shrilly, and we might save her by and by if led by Charlie Lilley. We want the gentleman who'll face the social shame and evil and sacrifice a higher place to seek the people's level. The parasite ne'er led the van to victory, nor will he, to lead us on when we need a man like brave old Charlie Lilley. So Charlie Lilley, will you dare the lying paper's fury? With God alone to judge you fair, the people for your jury. Can heart like yours keep warm and true on hearts where hearts are chilly? The people want to know if you are coming, Charlie Lilley. Ba-dum-ba-bum. All right, that was published in the Bulletin. Charlie Lilley. Well, the next one was published in Verses Popular and Humorous. Okay. It's a song, Rise Ye, Rise Ye. Rise ye, noble toilers, claim your rights with fire and steel. Rise ye, for the cursed tyrants, crush ye with the hire and eel. They would treat you worse than slaves, they would treat you worse than brutes. Rise and crush the selfish tyrants, crush them with your hobnail boots. Rise ye, noble toilers, rise ye, glorious toilers, awake, arise. Rise ye, noble toilers, tyrants come across the waves. Rise ye, yield the rights of labour, will ye still be slaves? Rise ye, mighty toilers, and revoke the rotten laws. Lo, your wives go out a-washing while you battle for the cause. Rise ye, glorious toilers, rise ye, noble toilers, awake, arise. Our glorious dawn is breaking, lo, the tyrant trembles now. He will starve us, he no longer toilers will not bend or bow. Rise ye, noble toilers, rise, behold, revenge is near. See the leaders of the people, come and have a pint of beer. Rise ye, noble toilers, rise ye, glorious toilers, awake, arise. Lo, the people are starved, my brothers, lo, our wives and children weep. Lo, our women toil to keep us while the toilers are asleep. Rise ye, noble toilers, rise and break the tyrant's chain. Rise ye, march ye, mighty toilers, even to the battle plain. Rise ye, noble toilers, rise ye, noble toilers, awake, arise. The Lay Em-Out Brigade is the next one. Here I'm up to page 222 on the 12th of the 12th, and I'm reading the 1892 poetry of Henry Lawson. The Lay Em-Out Brigade. When first this rum old world began to suffer for its sins, the tyrant and the rebel rose, and they, we know, were twins. The rebel was more numerous, and he and greed were foed. And so to keep him in his place, he hired in his place, the hired assassin rose. Thus, when first foundation stone of Mammon Tower was laid, the wealthy idlers organised the Lay Em-Out Brigade, where a man of noble mind but lacking gold of birth, with indignation eloquent, attacked the wrongs on earth, where he left his place and urged the children of the soil to claim a fairer portion of the harvest of their toil. As like as not his fiery blood of eloquence was stained, and he was perforated by the Lay Em-Out Brigade. Old Greed called out the troops where the wolves began to howl. Call out the troops, he cries today, when the workmen strike and growl, or call the military out. It's pretty much the same. The guards of Mammon shoot us straight by any other name. And when the coward robbers call the soldiers to their aid, and the call is nobly answered by the Lay Em-Out Brigade. When peasants find they cannot live no matter how they try, they stick a pike upon a pole and strike a blow and die. They seldom get a victory, but then what matters it? 'Tis well the Lay Em-Out Brigade should thin 'em out a bit. What matters if before 'tis due Dame Nature's debt is paid, some misery is ended by the Lay Em-Out Brigade. Britannia learned the lesson from the New World in its youth. The truth behind the cannon is a pesky kind of truth. The men of Bunkers Hill, behind their barricade of logs, they startled some of those who came to shoot 'em down like dogs. Britannia came to Bunkers Hill and lay 'em out, she said, but there she found another kind of Lay Em-Out Brigade. And when the Lay Em-Out Brigade received a check in France, the potentates were taught to dance the dodge the bullet dance. When scarce 100 years ago the Frenchmen turned about and caught the world that two could play a game of lay 'em out. The common people took a hand and quickly learned the trade and had an explanation with the Lay 'em Out Brigade. We'll take a lesson from the rich and try that good old plan that they shall take who have the power and they shall keep who can. For as the planet rolls along, emerging from its night, the toilers of the world grow strong and right at last is right. In theory, in practice now, the rebels' barricades are growing more unhealthy for those Lay 'em Out Brigades. The Chillin Brigadier is here, he swaggers past us now. I love the little drake tails that are curled upon his brow. He's got 'em on the cheek and all. He's here without a doubt. He's lately went to Africa to lay the Arabs out. The military spirit now is here in every grade, from privates to the cads who boss the Lay 'em Out Brigade. But in the land we love to shoot and call, the region of the dawn, I do not think the shoot 'em downs had better try it on. They tried it once in years gone by, way down in Ballarat, and shot some early patriots down, but we'll remember that. The monument where diggers fought and died in their stockade reminds us still of what we owe the Lay 'em Out Brigade. The thing might pass in Europe where rebellious peasants lie with dead eyes staring up into the chilly northern sky. They're used to that in Europe, but the southern rouseabout has not been educated up to being stiffened out. Our drama just begun, and when the afterpart is played, the Queensland shearers won't forget the Lay 'em Out Brigade. The military spirit, whoop, a pretty day begob, when we must play civilian to the military snob. We do not want the men who swear allegiance to the crown and loaf at our expense and learn the way to shoot us down. We'll pay to keep the men who fight for us when foes invade, but let the wealthy pay to keep their Lay 'em Out Brigade. P.S. I do not mean to sneer at all our workmen volunteers. They might not shoot according to their officers' ideas. For when the battle thunder wakes the workman's paradise, I think they'll fire a little high and miss in spite of price. Some rifles of Her Majesty's will join the underpaid and shoot in opposition to the Lay 'em Out Brigade. Well, that was also published in The Truth. And I think this is the last one I got for you tonight for Chillin' Tuesday. Before I read that, click on the thumbs up button, please, and then go to the subscribe and click on that, and then now click on the bell, which will notify you when I upload new videos like Chillin' Tuesday and Wednesday Words. The last one is You'll triumph, not in this land. You who speculate in labour, whether land or mines your spoil, you who gamble with the harvests of the children of the soil, we impeach you as embezzlers, we, the southern sons of toil. In the peace of long possession, you are blind and you are bold. You have fortified the mountains and your guns are manifold. But you'll triumph, not in this land, as you triumph in the old. Go and boast of our resources, but the land shall not progress in the poverty of labour and the wealth of idleness, even though the nations pass us while we struggle for redress. Shear us while you can in comfort, not for long you'll rob and rest. There are men of settled purpose in the regions of the west, hearts of gold to be discovered when the proper spring is pressed. In the dim and hazy regions that are opposite the morn, there's the spirit of the nation, there's the patriotism born in the darkness of your blindness and the silence of your scorn. And the land shark will not stop it with the wealth at his command, nor his everlasting fences stretching out across the land, driving farmers and selectors to the barren soil and sand. You have conquered for a season, we are bought and we are sold. You have strength as yet to rule us, and your selfish hearts are cold. But you'll triumph not in this land, as you triumphed in the old. Well, that's it. Chillin' Tuesday. Henry Lawson, 1892 special has finished. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you'll also see in the description below, there is our PayPal link. So if you'd like to make a donation, you are more than welcome to go to the PayPal account and make a payment to at Australian Poetry Hall. All right, I'm Thundercloud. I'll see you tomorrow for Wednesday Words Open Mic Poetry, which is expanding next year into open mic poetry, music, comedy, and whatever else. Okay, make it interesting. I'll see you next week for Chillin' Tuesday. I'm Thundercloud. Out in here, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. That's it. Boom. It's a boom.